My name is Allan Morin. I'm from a community called Ile-a-la-Crosse in northern Saskatchewan, which is north of the 55th parallel. We were independent Métis people. As independent people, we did certain things all season long. So as a child growing up in this place called Morin's Creek, just out of Ile-a-Crosse, in the spring, because we were independent people, my dad would grow a very large garden with all types of vegetables, from potatoes to carrots to other vegetables that we would use throughout the year. Our job as children was to help our father when he was gardening. So we would seed, we'd help in the seeding. We'd also help when the weeding was to be done, or the hoeing. As a result, a lot of times we had to go fetch water from the creek in order to water the garden. So that was our chore as young Métis children, way back in about 1950, 55, around that time. And then a lot of times our parents would send us to the berry patches to pick up blueberries, to pick up traditional medicines like tea muskeg and other things for our family. And then my mother, her name was Georgina Morin, but her maiden name was Georgina Case. She used to reward us if we picked a lot of berries. So many times one of my brothers, his name was Jeff, was considered to be one of the better pickers, because what he would do is, I would pick a bowl full of blueberries, and then he'd say to me, "Look over there, there's a bear." So I look away, and in the meantime he would spill my berries into his bucket, and then he'd run and deliver them to my mom, and he'd get the reward. So another thing we would do in the summertime is do a lot of hunting. We would hunt for and snare rabbits. We would hunt ducks. We would do some fishing and help our dad that way, in order for us to sustain ourselves in the winter season. Come the fall time, that's when we had to hoe our potatoes and pick out all the garden stuff, and then put them into a homemade cellar that we made. And our mother would keep very busy canning all the vegetables, berries that we had picked. So she would do that for weeks upon weeks, where she would can. And in the fall time, that's when the fall ducks would arrive, and there was abundance of fall ducks. So that's when we would hunt a lot of our ducks for the winter. And sometimes my mom would can a whole duck and put it in a sealer and stuff like that, and pressure cook it, and that way it would stay fresh all year, and we would have duck in the winter. Winter time, we would of course be going to school by then at the Ile-a-Crosse boarding school. So I had, as a child, was in the Ile-a-Crosse boarding school for about 9 years. Many times I would go home in the winter, and in the winter time my mom would take all the stuff that she had canned and all the food that she had stored, and she would cook for us and so forth. So that's how we kept our independency. We didn't buy that much in any of the stores. Most of the things we bought in the store was sugar, tea, and other small items, nothing major, because our income at the time would have been very small, maybe I would estimate $500 to $1,000 a month at that time. The Métis food we had in northern Saskatchewan, we made things like li-bai. It's like a bannock, but it's fried bannock, and it looks like fingers. Li-bai. We call it fingers today. We also made what we call laputsin. Laputsin was made during the Christmas season. Laputsin is a Christmas cake, dry fruit put in it that we bought from the Hudson Bay Company, for example. And laputsin was made with, they were put in sacks, like flour sacks, because at that time, sugar was in sacks, so that they'd save the sugar sacks, and then they would put the laputsin in there, and they would boil it, and out came a cake. And that's what we would eat during the Christmas season. In fact, to this day, they still make laputsin in northern Saskatchewan, but today they use coffee cans or with cheesecloth on them, and that's where they would put them. And then they would put it in water and boil it. We also made la galette. La galette in the Michif language is bannock, and that's what we call la galette, our bannock. We also made soups, Métis soups. One of them is called rababou. Rababou means soup that's made out of the animals that we harvested, like moose, deer, duck, and others, and we would mix our vegetables from the gardens, and we would make a kind of a stew, a soup, and that's what we call rababou. We also made liboulette, which is made out of, again, moose, like hamburger. They made them into bullets, small. That's why they call it boulet, which means like a bullet soup. And you can still purchase bullet soup today when you come to Folk Fest. One of the soups they usually have in Folk Fest is la boulet, bullet soup. So that is our cuisine, more or less.